Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Expressing concern over pendency of cases, Chief Justice of India Ranjan Gogoi on Sunday said that more than 2 lakh cases are in the courts for 25 years, while over 1,000 cases have not been disposed of even after 5 decades. Speaking at a public function, Gogoi said, though the judiciary faces criticism for the huge number of pending cases, it is not entirely responsible for the delay, as the executive also has some responsibility in the justice delivery mechanism. He also expressed hope that the centre will accept his proposal to raise the retirement age of High Court judges to 65 years from the current 62. Meanwhile, the Lok Sabha on Monday gave its nod to a bill to increase the strength of the Supreme Court judges from the present 30 to 33. As of now, the Supreme Court has a sanctioned strength of 30 judges plus the Chief Justice of India, which makes it 31 judges. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze what needs to be done to strengthen our judicial apparatus. Joining me on the program today are Justice Yatindra Singh, former Chief Justice, Chhattisgarh High Court; Professor S.K. Verma, former Director, Indian Law Institute; and Satya Prakash, Legal Editor of the Tribune. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Justice Yatindra Singh, I'd like to begin the program with you. This issue of pendency of cases and all the troubles that the judiciary is embroiled in. What is the answer to these problems? You know, this issue has been several people in the past have tried to address this issue but have not been successful. The number of pending cases have only been increasing. How do we get rid of that problem?
It has to be tackled by 2 ways. Number 1, we have to improve the quality of judges. Number 2,
go ahead, we can hear you.
1, we have to. I'm not able to.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The problem has to be tackled by 2 stages. Number 1, we have to improve the quality of judges. Number 2, number of judges have to be increased. India has 20 judges per 1 million of population. This is lowest in the world. The highest being America, which is 107 per 1 million. In order to improve the quality of the judges, the first thing should be done is to make the age of retirement of High Court and Supreme Court equal. A 3-year carrot often influences administrative decisions, which is unnecessary. Number 2, you have to ban the post-retirement appointments. They have to go. Third, you have to have Indian Judicial Service. 4, there are, in the lower judiciary, you have civil judges and higher judicial service. So far as civil judges are concerned, they are normally selected by Public Service Commission. But higher judicial service people are often selected by High Court. Judges are competent in deciding dispute. They are not competent in selecting or selecting the judges. This methodology should be given to Union Public Service Commission. High Court should not select judges. It is they often they run into problems.
Right.
In 2010, there was a big conference in Vigyan Bhavan, and that's the time they talked about the pendency, and I took a big research so far as Allahabad High Court was concerned. And I said, Allahabad has a sanctioned strength of 160. Today we have 100. At that time we had about 90 judges. Now if we appoint 160 judges in the High Court, then probably it will take 8 years to clear up all the areas.
Right.
One of the biggest reason is that we are not filling up the posts at all.
Right, okay. So let me take the points that you're making forward with the other panelists as well. Quite a few remedies that you have suggested as far as tackling with this particular problem is concerned. Professor Verma, not enough judges as far as the courts are concerned. Would you say that that is the biggest problem? How do we address that particular problem? Whose prerogative is it to fill up these posts?
I do agree that we do need to increase the number of judges. There is no doubt about it. You see, we are still having the same, almost the same number. We are as we had at the time of independence or whatever it is, because we have population has increased manifold, but the numbers of judges has not increased. It has not kept pace with the population, and moreover new developments. Right now, I mean, people are becoming more aware of their rights. They are for everything. They are going to the court, and but the court not always well equipped. As a matter of fact, you see the lower judiciary. If you look at, you see, it is not only the lack of judges; their quality is also not up to the mark. Many a times, I mean, they are asked to decide a case about which they have no knowledge at all. And actually sometimes they ask the client, you tell me where is the law, give me the statute book. So these are the things which need to be looked into. And furthermore, you see, like the lower judiciary, it is a role of the state government, which takes its own time. I mean, they don't really act. And I do agree with the Honorable Justice that in this particular case there should be National Judicial Academy which should conduct the exams, and because there will be some sort of uniformity in that particular case, and the quality will also be assured to a great extent. And right now this is not so. And another point which I would like to say that it is right, we should increase the number of judges. We should also have the I would say more courts at the same time, and the better quality of judges. But at the same time, with proper monitoring at the district levels, lower level, is very important. Because when we talk, as we are living in a metropolitan city, we know that here the judges, they do execute their job. But if you go away from these metropolitan, you will find that many of the judges, I mean, the court, the timing is 10:30 or whatever it is, they will never appear before 11:30 or so. And the clients will be peeping in their rooms.
Yes.
So, and then in the afternoon, they really disappear totally.
Sure. Even I've heard of instances where the advocates actually go into the chamber of the judge and call him out before a matter is to be heard.
Yeah, that is it. That you see, in one of my own cases, this is the problem we have.
Sure. So, Satyaprakash, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. Is the root of the problem the lower judiciary then? Because it is from there that the judges go upwards as well.
Well, I don't think the root of the cause is lower judiciary per se. Basically, the problems like first is the number of judges. We don't have enough number of judges. And who is to be blamed? It is the judiciary which is to be blamed. In high courts, where more than 4 million cases are pending, all the appointments are to be done by the collegium. Again, in the trial courts, where appointments are to be done, most of the high courts are responsible for appointments in the trial court. So the government per se doesn't have any role in appointment. Second is the issue of infrastructure. Incidentally, the Supreme Court is monitoring some one PIL in which they are monitoring not just infrastructure, also appointment of trial court judges. So there is a complete collapse of system, not just collegium, which we have talked about several times, even in trial courts, and which has not been talked about on many forums. Trial courts, there are more than 5,000 vacancies out of around 23,000, and most of the cases, around 2.6 something, around close to 2.7 crore cases are pending in the trial courts. So there is a total collapse of the system. What the Supreme Court is trying to do is trying to put things in place, and this is a very pathetic kind of situation. Why? Because primarily it is not the job of the Supreme Court to look after the appointment of trial court judges. Primarily it is the job of the high courts or the state concerned. But in some cases the examinations are conducted through the State Public Service Commission. So they have completely failed, and in the absence of their own role being performed, the Supreme Court had to intervene, and that too, the intervention of the Supreme Court was done at the behest of the Union government, because the the Union Law Secretary had written to the Supreme Court Secretary General that this is the condition of the trial court judges and let's do something. That particular letter was converted into a PIL and that's being done. Second is there is a misplaced belief among judges and those who are managing the judiciary that they can do everything. They are not superhumans. They are human beings and they have limitations because they are generally preoccupied with judicial work. In part-time, they are trying to manage the judiciary. The problem is they don't have professional court managers. Infrastructure is one thing, but unless you have professional court managers, it's very difficult. And the registrars, the way they manage in the Supreme Court itself, in the last several months, we have heard many cases where the court had ordered a particular case to be listed on a particular date. It was either not listed or listed on some other day. And then the advocates had to complain to the CJI and some other courts. And then the registrars, they were pulled up. But there are several other issues relating to conduct of advocates who seek frequent adjournments. There are lengthy procedures and several other related issues. So it is not just manpower or infrastructure. Many of the issues, use of technology. We have seen typewriters being used in trial courts, but now everywhere it's computers. So on the front of use of technology,
Right.
something has moved forward, but then we all discussed, and it has been widely reported when Justice J.S. Kher was the Chief Justice of India, he declared that Supreme Court will become a paperless court. And we can see every day in the Supreme Court huge files, including the Ayodhya case hearing, the bundles of files, it's mind-blowing.
Right.
So
right.
I am saying the use of technology and use of we call it mediation, conciliation and lok adalat. All these things will ease the burden on the mainstream judiciary.
Sure.
And this is how things can move ahead.
All right. So let me take one point that Satya Prakash is making forward with you, Justice Yatindra Singh, this issue of listing of cases. Now, this is something that the Chief Justice has spoken about as well. How big a problem is it?
Repeat that again.
Listing of cases,
couldn't get you.
something that the Chief Justice has spoken about as well. How big a problem is it?
Actually, it's not really a big problem. And it's quite easy to do it. The problem arises because, at least in the High Court, I'm not talking about the Supreme Court, but in the High Court, the Chief Justice says something, and the other judges say something else. So there has to be some kind of uniformity in the entire court itself. So far as administrative decisions are concerned, that is lacking. But if that is decided uniformly, then that problem will go away.
Okay, right. So talking about what the Chief Justice has said, let's talk about another aspect. Professor, he has also spoken about the role of the executive really in trying to address this particular problem. What can the role of the executive be in dealing with the issue of pending cases?
Actually, it is the role, executive role is very important. The reason being that it is the executive which have to take the ultimate decision that first of all, finances for the judiciary, then the providing the infrastructure, and laying down certain standards. I mean, for the appointment, as we have been in the Justice, Honorable Justice just talked about the Judicial Academy. Some sort of National Judicial appointment. They can
Indian Judicial Services.
Yeah,
basically.
Judicial Services. In that particular case, it can help. And then at the same time, because they will provide the finances, they will decide, they will increase the number, right, of the judges. At the same time, courts providing infrastructure. These are not the responsibility of the court. It is a responsibility of the executive. Another factor is, which is, I would say that the biggest litigant in India is the government itself. And for these very petty reasons, the case goes to the court, and it lingers on for years. I mean, nobody bothers. I mean, in most of the cases, like if you say that it has been there for 20 years or 10 years, or you will see that the government is involved in that. So they should find some other mechanism to resolve their disputes. And whereas we have the consumer courts, we have many other forums to decide the cases, why can't we have some sort of mechanism where the government, which is the litigant, these cases can go to that forum rather than the Supreme Court. Ultimately, it is a law point, and which should come to the Supreme Court or to the High Court. That is what it will be important.
Sure. So, talking about increasing the number of judges, there was a bill that was passed on Monday in the Lok Sabha, Satya Prakash, to increase the number of Supreme Court judges from 30 to 33. Do you believe that that is going to go a long way in trying to address this particular problem?
Well, the Supreme Court, when it started in 1950, there were only 8 judges, including the Chief Justice of India. Now we have 34, including the Chief Justice of India. This is the 6th time that the number of judges in the Supreme Court has been increased. And this is done by a simple amendment in the Supreme Court Number of Judges Act 1956. So a very simple amendment that instead of, in section 2, instead of 30, the word 33 will be there. So 30 has been replaced by 33. But the Supreme Court, the pendency is not that huge. In the entire Supreme Court, we have close to 60,000 cases pending. The real problem lies with the trial courts. I am not saying that Supreme Courts, because Supreme Court cases are important, because in many cases, by deciding one case, the Supreme Court can, actually ease the burden of trial courts to a great extent, because based on that Supreme Court verdict, many high courts can decide many cases in one go, or may in some cases the cases might collapse, because supposing there are suppose I am just giving a very recent example. All cases on section 377 of IPC, they all collapsed because Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. So there could be cases where the Supreme Court is deciding one question of law, and there are thousands of cases which are automatically decided. So it's important. Ironically, what has happened because of the lack of number of judges, because the sanctioned strength was 31, including the CJI, but we never had 31 judges. After almost a decade, now we have the entire, all the posts are filled. Maybe in the next couple of days, one particular judge is retiring. But it has happened after almost a decade. So, and why it didn't happen? Because Collegium could not take decision because they all know which judge is going to retire on which day. But still, they cannot take decision in advance, and the vacancy and similar vacancy remains, and similar thing is happening in the trial courts. So far as the role of the executive is concerned, I can tell you in the recent past, the executive has taken very, very serious steps. The most important being is spring cleaning of statutes. Almost 1,000 laws were repealed. Maybe many of them were appropriation bills, but still many archaic laws were repealed. And once the law is repealed, all related cases would automatically go. So this kind of exercise has been undertaken by the executive. Second, as I pointed it out, it was the executive which wrote to the judiciary, and that then the CJI converted it into a PIL about a vacancy in trial court judges, and the court is also monitoring some PIL in which it is dealing with infrastructure in various trial courts. But the problem is not just the Supreme Court or the High Court or the Collegium or the central government or state government. There are lots of issues here and there, but nobody has taken a holistic view of the situation and realistic view of the situation. What is needed is a proper white paper on the entire state of Indian judiciary. Why I am saying this? And once the white paper is released, let's have a discussion, proper discussion. All the stakeholders, be it central government, state government, Supreme Court, High Courts, maybe Law Commission is involved, and then the academia and media. Let's have a proper discussion. Why I am saying this? Because there is a report of the National Court Management Systems released in 2012, which paints a very grim picture, in the sense that in the next 3 decades, we are going to have our pendency rise to almost 15 crore cases. And then we would require almost 75,000 judges in all. And we are completely not prepared for that situation. So it's important to have a proper white paper on the entire state of Indian judiciary, and then let's take the bull by its horn.
Absolutely.
Because without doing that, why this is important? Because as the literacy rate rises, people are getting educated, people are getting aware about their own rights, economic condition of people is also improving, then it's more likely that people will go to courts for any reason.
Sure.
If their rights are violated or they are wronged in any manner, they'll go to courts. So the number is likely to rise like anything. And second reason is that every now and then we are enacting new laws. So every new law is going to create some kind of new, people are going to use that to file new cases.
Right.
So the numbers are going to rise, but we are completely unprepared to face this situation.
Sure. Okay, closing comments now from all my guests. Justice Yatindra Singh talking about, repealing of laws. On those very lines, can the same thing be done to cases that have been pending for over 50, 60 or 70 years maybe? Because in the CJI's words himself, he spoke about 1,000 odd cases being pending for more than 50 years.
This is another difficulty. Many judges, when the matter is being listed, the judges do not take up old cases. They take up new cases. Now that is also a decision is to be taken, administrative decision is to be taken, that old cases have to be decided first and thereafter the new cases have to be taken. Many of the old cases have become infructuous as well, and they can go by in a very short time. But many old cases are very important. They have to be decided. And just because they have become old, the judges are very afraid of touching them. There's another point that I would also like to make, which the point which Professor Verma was making about executive. If you look into that, executive adds to a lot of problem so far as pendency of cases are concerned. I was a judge in UP. The majority of the cases in Allahabad High Court were for directing the executive to take decision. Executive never used to take decision. They would leave it for the court to take a decision. And once you direct the government to take a decision, thereafter the government takes the decision and then you do it. Secondly, often they would write a very bad orders. Every order which they pass, they should write how they gave opportunity to the other side. They should also write what is the source of their power and what is the remedy available.
Right.
Their purpose, many a times, I have a feeling they purposely don't do it so that a litigant may go and get a stay order from the High Court. If the executive does a good administration, lots of cases can be saved at that stage as well.
Right. Okay. Professor, what's the best way forward?
Well, you see, I do agree. I mean, I would say that the executive must play a constructive role. They must take the responsibility, the number of judges, it is up to them to increase, I mean, because they have to provide the finances. And infrastructure is also up to them, because and technology which is coming at my other colleague, they have mentioned that it has to be taken into account that we have to change with time. Technology must be a big game. I mean, it will change the whole game, and so technologically savvy, all the courts should be made. And the cases, there should be a time limit, unlimited stays and unlimited dates, they should not be given. Despite the amendment of the Civil Procedure Code, we have not seen much change in the functioning of the courts. So it has to be looked into that these are the areas where of course the executive has to act, but at the same time judiciary must also do its job. And you see, it should not just with the fall of the hat give the new date, and there should be a limit that it should come to an end.
Right, right. It can't keep going on forever and forever. There should be some kind of a time frame really as far as these cases are concerned.
And the new courts, and there should be more courts, and because they are the old cases, we can have the retired judges who should monitor them and who should listen, decide those cases.
All right. Satyaprakash, close the show for us with the concluding remarks.
One is white paper on the state of Indian judiciary. Second is for old cases, be it in the Supreme Court or High Courts or trial courts, those who are dealing with the administration of justice on the administrative side, they should allocate such cases, say 50 years plus old cases or 10-year-old cases. On priority basis, there could be judges who are assigned these cases and they will deal with it. There is no point in not touching such cases because this will only add to the problem. So it can be handled like this, but then all the stakeholders, they have been talking together there is a proper mechanism, Chief Justices and Chief Ministers conference where even Prime Minister goes there and addresses the conference. So all the top leaders of the executive and the judiciary, they meet. There is a proper mechanism and there are resolutions adopted. Unfortunately, all those resolutions are not acted upon and some of them are still gathering dust.
All right. All right then, on that note, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.